I want to bring in our company Shira Center, Roll Call's politics editor, as well as Clarence Page, columnist for the Chicago Tribune. So here we are, all three of us actually. And Shira, I want to start with some of the reflections that Speaker Boehner had in a radio interview yesterday afternoon. Take a listen.
We fought the good fight. We just didn't win. We fought the good fight. There's just no reason for our members to vote no today.
All right, so fought the good fight here. Let's look forward. Did Republicans learn anything new from this? Might be the question here, Shira.
I don't know if they really did learn anything new from this. I think if they looked back, they'd be hard-pressed to say what they would have done differently in this situation, especially given the makeup of the caucus. And John Boehner, too. I think going forward, if he hasn't already, he's going to have some serious thoughts about whether he wants to stay on with this, what looks like not such a fun job as being Speaker of the House anymore. Yeah, nobody wants that job, it looks like. Let's get a Democratic view here for you, Clarence. It's Senator Chuck Schumer's take.
I think the Tea Party and Ted Cruz have peaked. First, they have so alienated their colleagues. But second, the tactics of the Tea Party. I'm going to hurt a lot of innocent people unless I get my way. This is the first time it was in the spotlight, that the American people saw it. They didn't like it. The Republican Party has learned a lesson here.
Well, some of them have learned a lesson, evidently, Clarence. Ted Cruz and Mike Lee voting against this deal. So did all the Republicans afraid of a Tea Party challenge. Will voters, as we saw some of the pictures, as many of these voters go back into these public parks, into these monuments, will they remember this come 2014, resulting in a backlash for the Tea Party?
Well, before we talk about 2014, we need to talk about January and February, as we just said.
Yeah.
We've only got a reprieve right now. This debate resumes, and new deadlines are coming up. What's interesting to me, Richard, is how the spin, if you will, conventional wisdom about John Boehner is shifting. Yesterday, it was poor Boehner, can't keep control of his caucus, etc. Today, the New York Times, for example, saying, well, Boehner really let the right wing just play out to the end of their rope, find out for themselves that they couldn't just go into something like this with no strategy and come out winners. They came out losing on every count.
But Clarence, isn't January, February the time when we are looking at these lawmakers starting to gear up their campaigns? And if this fight continues as it did in this past month, that doesn't portend well necessarily.
Well, yeah, I think Chuck Schumer may be too optimistic in saying that Ted Cruz and the Tea Party have peaked, although maybe not. This certainly, I think, is a wake-up call on both sides. And now that the hot stove has been touched, we see that certainly House members in those safe districts, those gerrymandered districts, they got little reason to listen outside of their own echo chamber. But there's other folks that can really make a difference this next couple of years.
Yeah, that hot stove is warm in some corners still. Shira,
yep.
It didn't sound like, for instance, Republican Congressman Matt Salmon is ready to give up the fight here. This is what he said.
I'm still going to make a prediction for you. President Obama will postpone major parts of Obamacare before this is through. I honestly believe that we're going to be able to make some changes to Obamacare. Our philosophy is do no harm. Try to stop the bad from happening.
Do no harm is what he said here, Shira. His meaning, we have to stop Obamacare from taking effect. Sounds like the same sheet of music that we've been hearing.
It is. It is very similar to the message that Republicans were talking about going into it and going into this entire fiscal impasse. But what's changed slightly is you'll hear in his words, he wasn't necessarily talking about defunding Obamacare, although I'm sure that's number one on his wish list. Instead, he's talking about just postponing it. And that's really what Republicans are looking at strategy-wise now. They are making the gamble that in a few months, people are really going to be sick of the broken website, all of the other parts of Obamacare when they see it really take effect, and they're hoping public opinion will swing back in their favor by the first quarter of next year as a result.
Okay, Shira, Clarence, stand by. I want to bring in Senator Bill Nelson, a Democrat from Florida. Senator, we've been showing some of the pictures this morning of individuals going back to work, of people going back into parks, the signs coming on down. Vice President Biden will be welcoming some of those employees as they come on back to work right now. And you've said regarding this entire thing, and repeatedly you've said this, a short-term debt ceiling increase will just kick the can down the road. So while we see that progress, at these monuments, that's what we still have going forward as we look towards January and February, isn't it?
count me as cautiously optimistic. This is kicking the can down the road in a more orderly way. It gives those of us on the Budget Committee to go to a conference committee. The House conferees, by the way, are small in number. The House leaders met today, issued a salutary statement. I've had a number of conversations. Remember, the budget process is to get a top line. This is all the way from what is a much higher level in the Senate budget resolution, much lower level in the House resolution. But we can get to that number with certain assumptions. Now, Republicans want income tax return reform. They want some tweaking of the entitlement programs. Democrats obviously want some more revenue. You can produce revenue out of income tax reform and some of the tweaking of the entitlement programs. So I think there might be more common ground than we think right now in all of this highly charged, divided partisan atmosphere.
You know, Senator, it seems that's where cooler heads did prevail, and that's in the Senate. That's where the deal came out of. But then again, you have your colleague, Senator Ted Cruz, who said this about the deal. Let's listen to that.
We saw the House of Representatives take a courageous stand listening to the American people that everyone in official Washington just weeks earlier said would never happen. That was a remarkable victory to see the House engage in a profile in courage.
A profile in courage. So, Senator, you mentioned some opportunities, but what do you make of what Ted Cruz is saying and what he might say going forward?
I like Ted Cruz personally. My wife and I just took him to dinner during this shutdown. But on this, Ted is wrong. And I think the earlier interview you had with Chuck Schumer is correct. I think the Tea Party has exposed themselves to the kind of tactics that they were using, which was reckless and irresponsible. And I believe as we go forward, you all in the media like to use the word adults, get the adults in the room. I think we're going to be able to do that. Fortunately, the debt ceiling causing the government to default, although the date is February 7th, I think that's off the table. So what we've really got to concentrate on between now and December the 13th is to get a budget agreement that will then replace that sequester that takes us so low on January the 15th.
Senator, you said you sat down to have dinner with Ted Cruz. What did you talk about?
Well, it was a social dinner, and it was something that senators ought to do. I mean, we run back off to our states the minute we're out of session. We don't do enough of this personal, social gathering. And my wife and I thoroughly enjoyed about Ted and getting to know him in the conversations, his background, his family. Likewise, he did with us. He happens to be my ranking Republican on the committee I chair, the Science and Space Subcommittee. I'm trying to get him to understand how important NASA is, that you can't put the sequester in there, $1.5 billion left on NASA, and do everything that little space agency wants to do. So I think it's building confidence in personal relationships, and then let's get to the tough, thorny policy matters.
Senator Bill Nelson, more dinners needed, certainly, if that works for us. I appreciate that. Thank you for your time again.
Thanks.